What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. Today's video is going to be a reaction to Chibi Reviews content. I saw a video from him a while ago that I actually wanted to respond to. It's called Manga Gets Banned in USA Schools. Now, the reason I want to give my reaction to this before we hop into the video is just that I feel like he has valid points on this, but I can also see where others do too. So we're just going to hop right into it, and obviously I'm going to give my thoughts and everything based on what he says. But before we do, also, if you can, please be sure to like, comment, and subscribe to the channel. I'd love to talk with you all about this topic and everything and just see what your thoughts are. Without further ado, let's hop right in. Just 1 second here. We're going to get the video right up for you guys. There we go. Okay. Alright, so let's hop in.
The United States has banned a manga. Assassination Classroom is on the chopping block. I have been linked multiple times in the last 24 hours to a post like this and many similar posts, and even given a link to the actual article on Anime News Network on what happened. But to give a quick rundown, basically, in South Carolina, United States, Assassination Classroom was pulled from a school district, a high school of all things, not a middle school, not an elementary school, a high school. Assassination Classroom was pulled from the school and no longer being able to be used or even be put on the shelves there. It is effectively banned. And it's, I'm just gonna be honest, regardless of whoever is responsible, getting down into the nitty-gritty, I hate censorship, I don't like it at all, and when I see stuff like this, it's basically, once again, the usage of video games causes violence, but now it's like anime causes violence, manga causes violence. You get the point I'm getting at. I just hate this. It's basically these individuals that really are mentally ill. They cannot separate fiction from reality.
Okay, now we're going to pause there because I'm going to get my thoughts on that whole statement he just made. So for me personally, as you can see by my room probably, if you guys saw the posters and stuff in the back, I'm a fan of anime, right? But I think anyone, and you have to understand where, like, I think this is where I think Chibi's a little too extreme with what he's saying here. Anyone that sees a book called Assassination Classroom has a little bit of validity when they're in a school of all places to go, okay, what's this book about? And then obviously judge the content of the book, let alone the title, for what it may be. Whether he wants to adjust it or not, obviously, as this whole year has shown, and even years prior, we have a problem with school shootings in this day and age. So the whole fact that he's basically saying, like, oh, people aren't able to distinguish reality from, fiction, it's like you have to make the same argument for people that can't, that also take a book like Assassination Classroom, and they don't distinguish the reality from that to that either. Yes, it's a little bit of a overreach when it comes to the comparison from what he's saying versus what I'm saying, but you have to understand, and it doesn't matter if it's because, like, it's specifically anime in this instance. Some people really do see things that are violent and other types of media, and they kind of do get ideas. They do get like certain inklings based on those things, and unless they're not like properly guided by their parents or people that they know, it can become bad. And some people, like, we don't even know, like, any of the school shooters that have been found this year, like the one in El Paso and all that, what they were into. It doesn't matter if it was anime, video games, or manga. It's just the fact that you specifically, and this was my biggest issue with this video, you specifically have a manga called Assassination Classroom, which no, I haven't watched. I wasn't really interested. People told me it's cool. That's awesome. I hope they enjoy it. But for me, I'm more of a Naruto, One Piece, the basic kind of guy. Sometimes a little bit of Prototype and other anime, or not Prototype, Parasite, sorry, different other animes like that. And while they do have certain, graphic scenes and gore in them as well, I think just like the premise of specifically Assassination Classroom being in a school, it's not even unrealistic for somebody to see that book title and want it out of a specifically school. Can you buy it in stores? Yeah. Can you go home and watch it? Yeah. But I think for it to be specifically in a school based off of its title alone, we have to look at the bigger picture here, and whether someone's able to distinguish fiction from reality or not, it's just the premise that it leads to based off of what the book actually is called. Now, if it was called, like, like classroom overdrive or classroom, school or whatever the case, right? If it had any other words besides assassination classroom, I think I could see the validity of Chibi's argument here a little bit more. But like for all you guys out there that are watching this, we have to understand one big thing here. The manga is called Assassination Classroom. If a parent sees that and doesn't know anything about anime or manga, they're already going to see the title of the book and be discouraged right off the bat. Anybody would with kids. I don't think Chibi has a child yet, but anybody with kids, I don't even have a kid, but anybody that I know that is a parent, if they see this book specifically, and it's depending on the grade or whatever, it's just the fact that it is something that they're going to be concerned about, and you, as someone who's in the anime community, can't sit there and look at this and then be like, what's wrong with these people? Because one, it makes it very uninviting, and two, you invite a force that goes against what you're already saying, because now you're making them seem less intelligent based off of what they do or don't know, just because of the title alone, which already, in my opinion, loses the whole beginning battle on this war of, okay, is it appropriate for a school? And I think that's perfectly fair because, again, I'm just going to say it again because, obviously you can see it here for yourselves, but the book is called Assassination Classroom. We have to be realistic and understand that parents that don't know anything about manga or anime are going to see this book and this title in general and go, okay, my kid's not reading that. This is not staying in the school, just as much as they would any other thing that is a little bit too inappropriate or could be damaging for their children. And I get Chibi doesn't understand this because obviously he's a little bit more on the anime side based on his channel and everything else. And, obviously he probably watched the manga and anime. But that still does not give him the right to sit here and say, hey, these people can't put reality from fiction on a book that is literally called the thing that people do in this country that they don't want them to do. So let's continue the video and see what he says.
And that's basically what's on full display here. But before I get ahead of myself, let's talk about what happened, why this happened in the first place, and also, is this the first time it's actually happened? Well, no. If you go back, if you do a brief Google search, you will find out that Assassination Classroom has faced censorship/banning before in the United States. Almost 2 years ago, actually, at this point, Assassination Classroom was pulled from Florida and Wisconsin school libraries. And so, you might have heard about this story in the past already, but yeah, this is basically a reenactment of that of what happened in 2023, and I think also happened in 2022, don't quote me on that one, but basically I know for certain, you can even look at this article date in 2023-04, when this actually was posted. The point is that Assassination Classroom has obviously been front and center for manga censorship in the United States for the past few years at this point. And you're probably wondering to yourself, why? Why is that the case? Now, regardless of how I'm going to explain this, once again, I want to make sure I state this. I don't think manga, anime, movies, video games, etc. cause violence. I don't think so. I don't think they cause people to do anything crazy or anything like that. If someone's going to do something crazy, they were already capable and going to do something crazy.
Okay, now let's respond to that real quick. I'm not going to say he's wrong on that. That's actually a valid statement, right? I think anybody that intakes any kind of media should definitely be able to control themselves based on how that media is portrayed or what kind of content is within that media. That's fine, right? It's just the fact, again, that, like, whether it does or not, it's just, you again have to take the parents. And, like, I don't know, I'm not a parent yet. I want to be one day, of course. But my whole thing with this is just, if you have someone who's on the opposite end that doesn't know anything about manga or anime, you can't sit there and try to convince them that certain things that they don't find appropriate for their children, whether it's because it inspires them or not, are appropriate. And I think that we just forget that, especially Chibi here, who obviously, I'm just gonna again say I don't think he has any children, so maybe it's a little bit different for him to see versus the love of anime and manga. And don't get me wrong, as you can see, I love anime and manga. But it's no business of anybody that doesn't have a child, especially within certain schools and areas, to tell them what is appropriate for their child, and it sucks, you know what I mean? But the correlation has to come from somewhere, because you have to understand, like, if you see a crazy, gruesome scene in an anime, whether you intake that and, you think to yourself, oh, I want to do whatever with that or not, it's just the fact that can happen. And it doesn't matter if it's because of the cause of this or that. It doesn't even matter if it's the cause of this or that. It's just the fact that to lower that chance and to give your child or somebody who might be more susceptible a clear way to get around and away from things that might, lead to certain ideas, that's a good thing. You know what I mean? So that's just my thought on that.
Games, manga, anime doesn't cause it. I'm just gonna say it. Anyways, with that being said, why? Well, if you look at the past case and then you look at the recent case that came out, and let's just read this description. Let's just get right into it. Assassination Classroom manga has been banned in South Carolina School District, United States. This is after a mother complained it had handguns, rifles, knives, and potions. Okay. And it talks about killing in the pages, along with there are girls in lingerie hopping on top of men in the book. And
okay, so I can understand the weapons part. I can understand how potions definitely lead to, certain paraphernalia. And, girls in lingerie, I understand that too a little bit because it's a little more sexual. But we have to slow down whether he's about to give his, overall idea of this or not and think to ourselves, okay, if you're a parent, and obviously, your kid sees. Also, guys, give me 1 second here. I'm actually going to increase my size just for a second there. There we go. I don't know if I was too small in the video or not, but we definitely decided to make that a little better there. All right. But anyways, what I was saying is that I understand what chibi means, and maybe real quick I should just put myself over here. Let me just do that. Okay. So, anyways, I understand what he means about everything, right? He's definitely not wrong in the fact that what I think he's about to say is, even though it has these things, you're taking them and you're overconflating them to the child's overall mental well-being or intake of the subject or whatever. But like even Naruto, right? This was me. I don't know if it was you, but my grandparents were a little more strict. When Naruto does what's called the sexy jutsu, my grandparent, or my pop-up especially, he did not like that. So he was kind of against me watching it for a while. But did that ever, incite me to be a bad person or anything like that, or have any unhealthy habits? Not really. And I think that's the thing at the end of the day too, is like I get what he means by these things are in there. So even though they're in there, we shouldn't really, worry about essentially what it may do. But like you have to understand that's just not your kid. And if, weapons, I get the potions part, that's a little bit so like I'm not completely 100% on what she's saying is in here, but then the girls in the lingerie hopping on top of guys in the book, there is levels of like, okay, it doesn't matter what you think. If somebody doesn't want their child seeing that because it's not age appropriate for them, that's just what it is. So that's just my thoughts on that.
I'm gonna be honest. I gotta keep this a $1.50, okay? I can even give leeway to the potion comment, but I don't legitimately remember like hopping on men. Like maybe I'm misremembering because it's been a long time since I have read Assassination Classroom. I was reading the series weekly. I've reviewed it weekly for a while when it was coming out in Weekly Shonen Jump. I don't remember it. I know there's fan service. I know there's fan service in Assassination Classroom. I don't deny that. I just don't think it's as excessive as the way this mother is explaining it.
Well, even then, that's again getting back to my point here, guys, is like whether it's as excessive as or she's explaining it or not, if you know there's fan service in there and those children are not of age in order to see those things, if a mother is not comfortable with her child seeing that or reading that, that's completely her right. You know what I mean? And we have to understand that whether you like anime or manga or whatever you may feel about it, it's just not the right of someone who can make a video about it to go, okay, well, you're being silly. They should be able to watch it because it's really not that bad, or maybe it won't give them that much of a thing. You know what I mean? Like, it's just not your kid, and I think that that's where we have a duty, especially people that have watched anime, to go, okay, we understand what this one's about, we understand the age of this child, maybe this one's not appropriate for them, but this one might be. Even though this one's badass, if it really has to come down to a subset of things, like, you could read this manga when you come of this age, or whatever, right? But at the end of the day, I just feel like he's trying to paint a picture here where it's like, okay, like just because I've watched it and I read it, it just basically you're over exaggerating, and I think they should still be able to read it is the main premise. But again, we have no right, whether you think something has an exaggerated sense or not, to tell someone that like, hey, your kid or whatever should be able to read this manga or anime.
Which gets into the main point. Basically, what we have going on here is a Karen slash a mother that it's kind of like 20 years ago where mothers and parents and stuff used to say video games cause violence. That's what's happening here. You have a mother coming in saying this manga, this anime is causing violence. You need to remove this and all that. This is corrupting the children's minds. That's kind of what this looks like. And I'm just like, this is literally that same exact argument with just a new flavor. I'm just like, dude, this is kind of wild. But, anyways, this isn't, like, necessarily a politician. This isn't, let's say, the government or anything necessarily doing anything. This is more or less complaints from a mother and them removing it from a single high school. Once again, I don't think this is okay. I don't think this should have happened. But once again, I do want to point that out, that this was just complaints from an actual parent that got this to happen. And the same thing basically happened in the past as well in Florida and Wisconsin. Now, one thing I do want to also talk about is the imagery, or at the very least what Assassination Classroom is about, and why this mother might get the big idea that it shouldn't be in schools. So, I don't want to get down the very messy political type stuff going on, but obviously, guns, schools, yeah. Yeah, so basically, Assassination Classroom, the premise is the main class, the kids within the school, basically getting rid of their teacher, assassinating their teacher. And literally the first chapter starts off with the kids pull off all sorts of different weaponry to be able to get rid of Koro-sensei. Now, obviously, the story and the themes, there's so much more to it than that. It's not surface level. There's so much to learn and take away from Assassination Classroom. But obviously, if you look at it surface level, obviously people will be like, this seems very too sensitive in terms of, like, content that happens in real life.
Okay, so again, like this is what I mean about how like, and he's obviously stated his viewpoint that it shouldn't be banned or anything, and I get it. You know what I mean? It's like like basically he thinks they should be able to handle it and all that. We get it. We get people should be able to separate reality from fiction, but like that's what I was saying in the beginning, how like somebody that doesn't understand anime or manga, they don't have to get the context behind the show in order to understand that if they don't like the actual premise of it for their child, then they get the right to sit there and say, hey, I don't want my kid or children in the school to be reading this. Does it suck? Yeah. But at the end of the day, and this is what I feel like, if it's really that much of an issue for you, or if you're not with the whole thing saying it's just a new flavor, go home, find a friend who can read it, get it from them, read it in private, and then go from there. That's the way you would do it if you truly want to read this type of content and you feel like you can handle it without it affecting your daily life. But like it is just my opinion to all you out there, because obviously someone that's in the anime community, myself, and then also Chibi, I think we have a little bit of a similar slash different viewpoint here, where it's like a parent has complete right to choose what is appropriate for their children, and I don't think that's wrong at all. And I think we as people in the anime community, have a duty to go, okay, well, if younger people want to get into this, that's cool. It's a very inviting community. There's so much for people to watch. There's so many different genres, all that, right? But if something's not appropriate for you, then at the end of the day, I think that should be left up to the people that want to say whether it is or not. And I don't think trying to make it an over-exaggeration is something that, again, is very inviting for the other side, because if they're going to truly let their child or maybe even get into anime and manga, then yes, they should have their own viewpoints on it too. And then maybe if there's a little bit more of a conversation and understanding after the fact, then you know what, they'll be perfectly fine and the manga will basically still be able to be sold and all that. But when we make this a big issue and we try to make it so our opinion's more than the other person's, I just feel like this explanation by Chibi was just a little bit too other-sided because of the love of anime. You know what I mean? Like, I love anime too, again, but there's two sides of the coin, and you have to look at the other side and at least give them their credit where credit's due. Now, is he right in the fact that, sometimes it's a little bit overblown? Yeah, of course. But is he wrong in the fact that, this mother or whoever chose that it wasn't appropriate and they chose to do that because that's what they think and they didn't care about the context no matter what he says about it? Yeah, of course, and that's fine too. But like, I just feel like this whole video again, for me, and why I wanted to react is just if someone chooses to do whatever with their child, and you are not a parent, and you are especially not a parent of that child, does not matter how much you love, read, watch, whatever something, even have an opinion about something. That is their ultimate decision at the end of the day.
So I think that's what led the mother to come to this statement. Once again, I'm not agreeing with the mother. I'm not saying this should be banned or anything, but that's most likely the case because Assassination Classroom is very popular. It's won multiple awards in Japan, and I don't know if this is exactly what I'm about to say, but I believe that a lot of manga that's put on shelves in the library in schools is usually because they earn a lot of awards, like in Japan or different countries, and when they weren't like earn a lot of awards, they're put on the shelves in schools. That I believe that's how they handle it. Maybe they've changed it or whatever, but I believe that's how they handle it. So if that's indeed the case, obviously it makes sense why Assassination Classroom would be on the shelves, because it's an award-winning manga. It's won multiple awards. It's very popular at that. Very good messages and life themes and all that. But yeah, I think that's what it necessarily comes down to. So the moral of the story is there really isn't a moral. It's more or less people just not knowing how to separate fiction from reality, not being able to raise their kids properly, mentally ill people, all sorts of stuff like that. I would just say that overall, this is probably not going to be the last time we're going to see something like this, because like I said, there's been a somewhat crusade against anime and manga as of late. I mean, I've talked about this a lot recently. I mean, like, let's think about the translation issues where, you know, you have people agenda pushing and changing literal meaning of translations into English or English dubs, or let's talk about the full-blown censorship of just fan service in general, or let's not even get into the card companies that are trying to block sites in Japan from even being able to make money. Absolutely messed up stuff. So, I mean, there's definitely been a crusade actively for the last few years against anime and manga. This isn't the first time this has happened, and I do hope that things do change relatively. I hope there's laws or something put in place where stuff like this can happen, because it's just like, look, man, banning books isn't the way. I'm just gonna be.
Okay, so I definitely get what he means, and I get the free expression that he's trying to go for here and the fact of manga and anime, but I don't know, man. I like Chibi and I watch his content, and if by any chance Chibi watches this, you just gotta understand, man, that like, so yes, you don't want to ban everything, and people should be able to distinguish reality from fiction. But again, a parent's not raising their child wrong if they take something that they don't find appropriate for their child and go, okay, I don't want them reading this, or I don't want other kids reading this because it's going to be inappropriate in these spaces. And I just think it's such a shame here, because it's like, okay, Chibi's a good guy, truly, right? I mean, like, I'm not trying to be rude. The dude's cool, definitely goes over certain topics. There's certain things that I'm like, about, you know what I mean, when it comes to like certain anime posts or whatever, but I mean, I get it, you know what I mean? But at the end of the day, my whole thing with this whole video, is just that we have no right to tell anyone that they basically aren't raising their child right because they don't want them to read a manga that involves, you know, guns and girls and all this other stuff included, and let alone the fact that, you know, they're in a school and there's a book called Assassination Classroom. Like, we have to understand from the very jump that whether it's the context or not, that is no one's right but the parents to say, hey, this is not appropriate. And if the kid truly wants to read it, they have their own ways to do so, whether it's under the guise of the parents or whether they have to get older or not. But we, as people in the anime community, whether you watch it lightly or whatever, cannot just go out telling parents and people that basically, oh, well, your kid can't read this and it's wrong that it should be banned because it's really not that bad. Because you never know, there might be that kid that takes it a little bit too serious. And, you know, I'm not going to say like video games all that cause violence, but I'm saying like there's always that one factor where if it could happen, it's better to prevent it from happening. So I'm not saying that it causes it. I'm just saying that in no way was this mother wrong in the fact that she didn't want, you know, her son to be reading this type of stuff. And I think it's just the fact that, you know, if you truly want to read manga and anime, there's many more to read out there that aren't as, you know, maybe a little bit too older for you or whatever. But I think Chibi just failed to say that in this video and was a little bit too one-sided in the fact that he wanted to protect the anime versus going, okay, well, this mother actually wants to just make sure her child's okay and nothing happens in the school, which we all don't want to happen. And especially we don't want to happen, but we don't want to happen before it's too late, as we've seen time and time again. So I think she's perfectly fine. I think she did the right thing. I think Chibi's half right in the fact that he, obviously said what he said, but there's some things I actually disagree with. What do you guys think? Please be sure to leave your comments and thoughts down in the comment section below. I will respond to as many as I can, and I hope you all have a good day. See ya.